display, I feel that almost anything I could say would be superfluous, but I'm going to try. I have some sentences on my sheets of paper here. As Joshua said, he didn't specify, but it was I, from whom he got the idea, or I had the idea that I should say something quite right. After listening to the performers get the notes right, this is somehow in a parallel, you will understand. A recently published photo in a journal called Open Space, possibly known to many of you here, or some of you here, on the cover shows Milton Babbitt turning knobs on the RCA Mark II synthesizer in the Columbia Princeton Music Center. It's an image Milton would be glad to have in circulation now. This Milton in the photo of the 1950s is the wizard of 20th century electronic music in its pioneering phase. This Milton is the composer of works whose difficult continuities lay well beyond the horizons of most listeners in his time, and, dare I say it, might still. This Milton is the brilliant modern intellectual whose rapid thought and verbal wit dazzled every audience to whom he ever spoke, whether he was lecturing to students, talking about Broadway show tunes, which he knew like the back of his hand, or explaining semi-combinatoriality in Schoenberg. His mind craved constant action and stimulation, as when, and Joshua's mentioned this, my version of it is that he liked to copy parts on Sunday afternoons while watching pro football games. There was one Milton, but there were other Miltons as well. He was so multifaceted and so wide-ranging. I first encountered him in what now seems, and certainly is, the prehistoric year 1952, when, as a graduating senior at Queens College, I went down to Princeton to get my first glimpse of the university and its music department. Mac Payton was then a student, you'll know. I was applying for graduate work in musicology. Incidentally, one of my dearest lifetime friends, who should be mentioned here today, Donald Martino, arrived that same year, that same day, and we all took all the courses together, no matter what they were. Sure enough, that first day in Princeton, I met Oliver Strunk and Arthur Menville, later to be my teachers, my main teachers, but I also sat in on a seminar that Milton was giving on the history of music theory. That afternoon, in his usual prestissimo tempo, Milton discoursed at length and without notes on the essential contributions to late 18th century theory of Heinrich Christoph Koch and Joseph Riepel, then moved on to the first formulations of sonata form by A.B. Marx and Carl Czerny. Then he switched, in no time flat, to the question of how Berlioz's harmonic innovations really can be found prefigured in the writings of Anton Reicha, who was Berlioz's teacher. The next year, or in that very year, 1952, saw Milton's review of Felix Salzer's book, Structural Hearing, published in the Journal of the American Musicological Society. It is as powerful a statement about Schenker's approach to the analysis of tonal music as has ever been made, and it was deeply influential in its time. It should still be read by everyone. Milton knew his way around the musicological literature much better than he liked to admit, and it was from him that I first heard the name of Gustav Nottebohm, the friend of Brahms and the pioneering scholar of the Beethoven sketchbooks in the late 19th century. It is deeply relevant and indicative of his versatility that in these years he was the primary teacher of Donald Martino and David Lewin. He was my teacher too, and then my department colleague at Princeton for more than 20 years, until I came to Harvard in 1980. Milton forever professed his allegiance to mathematics and to logical and rigorous ways of thinking, but there was always in him a quiet openness to the poetics of music, to the deeper strains of feeling that he brought to his modes of perception, a poetry that once in a while, as in his Philomel, pierced the surface of his own compositions. Contrary to the public impression created by the infamous title given to his essay on the composer and the public, the title known here to everybody, quote, "Who cares if you listen?" He cared deeply about his own listening and about that of his listeners, even if he hardly ever said so. I can't sum it up, There is too much to allow such a thing. But at the center of it all, as I see it, was Milton's special high-level combination of experience and knowledge. His music requires that we try to understand not just what is happening, but what complex ways of thinking underlie it. And it demands repeated hearing, like all music that has left the world of entertainment behind, but just as much that which still inhabits it. What was true of Schoenberg was true for him too, that he was trying to expand the limits, the horizons of the music of his time, and as he would say, extend the musically possible. If you think of music as a form of expression, but also as a vast domain of knowledge, you are on Milton's track. For him, the two were inseparable. And that combination, that contribution, is going to be influential for a very long time.